Hello there, welcome to Stamford Bridge and welcome to part 2 of the Gary Neville Podcast. You had part 1 live from the Emirates last night. We're at Stamford Bridge, and what better place to start on what we've just seen here, Gary? Chelsea coming from behind to win against West Ham. What did you make of Chelsea's performance here?
Well, the old adage of the points are the most important thing, I think, was signified most by the celebrations of the coaching staff at the end and how much of a relief it was. There was 4 or 5 of them in a huddle. I think they recognised that they just needed 3 points tonight, and it wasn't easy. The first half, I was frustrated with Chelsea last week, and I spoke about that quite a lot after the City game. But in this first half, I'm not sure it's just Chelsea either. This habit that teams are developing of, the opposing team are getting back into a shape which is deep and compact, which is not new, and then the attacking team, the home team, invariably, are sort of just recycling it and playing safe passes. And what you're finding is that the talented players like Cole Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, then going deeper or wider to get on the ball. And the game hasn't changed that much from when I played. I remember Sir Alex Ferguson used to have to urge Wayne Rooney, don't get frustrated, don't start coming deeper, stay in there, be patient, we'll get it into you in the end. If we keep passing it quickly, eventually we'll get it into you and we'll get a little bit of life, but we have to have you in there where it matters. So Cole Palmer started to get into those positions in the second half, but in the first half he was coming far too deep. Chelsea recycling it, playing far too safe, and it's something that happens far too often, I think, in modern football, where teams are micromanaged within an inch of their lives, and they've got such structure in their attacking play, and you mentioned it, that spontaneity is gone. What happens is, when something happens, when there's an event in a game, a sending off, a goal against the grade, all of a sudden the game comes to life and we see the Premier League. All of a sudden we see the Premier League. And for the last half an hour, 45 minutes, we saw a proper game. The first half an hour, 40 minutes, same at Arsenal City on Sunday, and so many other Premier League games, we're letting games drift and sort of teams are sleepwalking into trouble. And Chelsea have done that, and they've got away with it tonight. They've got a little bit of fortune. We'll talk about the goals in the second half that came. But there's definitely, I think, some improvements to make. They're a young team, that's been said many times. They've got a maturity to come, and they've got a development to come, and they've got leaders, I think, in that dressing room who might emerge in the next few years. But good 3 points, but quite a lot of work to do.
Is this the sort of night that will help them on their progression, sort of dealing with the adversity, things going against them in the first half?
Yeah, and look, sometimes it helps you to lose, to sort of pin you back and ground you and think, we need to improve. But then sometimes if you can sort of look at the video tomorrow, and Maresca can look at the video with his players tomorrow or the day after, whenever it is they look at it, through a lens of positivity, which is, look, we've won the game, we've got the 3 points, so everybody feels a lot better, the fans are leaving a lot happier. You can then start to point out the criticism, I think, a lot better as a coach, because you can say, look, lads, look at this in the first half, we can't do this. It happened at City, it's happened here, it's happened in a couple of matches recently that you played in. We've got to stop doing this, or else we're going to lose points, we're going to lose games, and you're not going to achieve what you want in football collectively, and that's really important. So I'm sure he'll take them through the video and the analysis, and from a position of strength, because they've won the game and the players feeling good about themselves because they've got back into it in the second half. Look, we need to get this right, because we can't allow large portions of games just to shift by and move by.
Are Chelsea about where you'd expect them to be, in the 4th position after those around them missed out this weekend?
Yeah, I think they're in a good position, and I think they're having a good season. I think the shock probably is that run they went on was in a period where you would have thought they'd have picked up many points, the opponents they had on the table. So I think that, but where they are, just on reflection from the start of the season, I actually had them in 4th. I watched them in the first game of the season. I really like what I saw. And you're going to get, with a young team, you're going to get this roller coaster. You're not going to get this sort of, if you like, perfect sort of, if you like, climb to the top. It is going to be a little bit like that, where they're going to pick up these lessons along the way. And we're seeing that. They need improvements in 2 or 3 positions, and I think they'll know that as well. So it's not just a case of these young players will develop and they'll have enough to win a league. They'll need to add to the squad, and they've added a lot to the squad already. But in goalkeeper, centre-forward, maybe a centre-back, they're going to need to improve. But they are on the right track, and they're in a good position and where I thought they would be at the start of the season.
Just a couple more on Chelsea tonight. The goalkeeping situation was a big topic ever since what happened at the Etihad, and also here against Wolves, with Robert Sanchez becoming a liability. Did we see from Philip Jorgensen tonight anything to suggest that he might be the solution?
It's too early to say. I think there were a couple of nervy moments, weren't there, which is natural for a young goalkeeper coming in under such pressure, having seen his mate and his teammate who he trains with every single day. Goalkeepers train so closely. You know, I know all football players do, but goalkeepers, they go out together, they work together, and they don't want to see their mates suffer as much as they want their chance themselves. And the pressure that will have built on Jorgensen, you could see in the first half. You know, it's been quite a comfortable night for him. I think the tougher tests are to come, where obviously he'll get put under a lot more pressure, and we'll see what happens then.
And West Ham, a lot of, the other conversation coming into this was the return of Graham Potter, who was bombed out here. It didn't go well for him here at Chelsea. He will be obviously disappointed with the manner of the defeat, but there was a lot of positives in there for West Ham tonight, was there?
Oh yeah, I think he'll be looking at the game from a point of view tomorrow. Talk about sort of watching it back with his players. I think he'll be looking at it and saying, lads, if we can play like this and do some of the things that we've done here tonight for the majority of games in the rest of the season, we're going to pick up a lot of points and we're going to win football matches. I thought defensively they had structure. I thought they were a threat when they got the ball into Bowen, who's a massive player for them. But when you had Bowen on the pitch and Kudos up top in the second half towards the end, and you had Ings coming on, they did look like a real threat, West Ham. And I thought the defensive shape was excellent. I really did. I even thought at the start of the second half for 15 minutes, not only did they have the defensive shape, but they also, from that defensive shape, were able to spring out and attack and play really good football. I thought they were confident. They were the most confident team. It took Maresca to make 4 changes for Chelsea really to get into a position whereby they got back into the game. So I think Graham Potter will be happy with a lot of what he's seen. I think he'll be angry with the decision on the first goal. I mean, that's a definite foul by Colwill. He's just rash. Jorgensen comes out and converges on his own defender, so all of a sudden Colwill sees that and thinks, I better stop Bowen going, sort of closing him down, and just cuts across him and takes him out. I mean, if you can't see that as an assistant referee over that far side looking across the pitch and a referee, it's disappointing. And then there's this thing of VAR not being able to go back so far, and it's quite vague, but maybe it's not that attacking phase of play. And then the second goal, I always say no own goal is a fluke, because I always think if a defender is having to lunge in the box, that there's usually a positional error, or you've not quite...
You're saying this to your friend Mr. Carragher.
Pardon? Yeah, he was the best at it, wasn't he? But actually, that was probably that was hard lines, that one. That was one where you're trying to block a cross as a defender. And he couldn't have envisaged that was going to come up off the edge of his boot and loop wickedly the way in which it did over Areola. So there is some misfortune for West Ham tonight in the goals that they've conceded.
Well, let's focus on the positives. They've signed Evan Ferguson, who hasn't had a great time of it at Brighton for one reason or another. But he's got a fresh start under a man he knows well, Graham Potter, who brought the best out of him at Brighton. If you've got Kudus on one side, Bowen on the other, and Ferguson through the middle, that's quite exciting for a West Ham fan, isn't it?
You've got a threat, and you've got Pakatara, obviously, to come back as well. I mean, you've got a real threat. You've got people who can feed them as well. So I think that Graham Potter, I think he'll be enthused. I think he'll be enthused about what's coming and what, Ferguson... Obviously, players to come back from injury. I think he'll be enthused by the defensive structure tonight and how they've held it together against Chelsea. You've got some really talented forward players, and if Chelsea have thrown all their forward players at West Ham tonight to get to the point where they've won the game. So, I think he'll be happy. I think he'll realise that there's a big job to do, but he'll be thinking, actually, I fancy this a little bit. There's a good group of players here that I can work with and some top talents.
Now then, that's tonight's game. I know that a lot of Manchester United fans will expect us to react to what happened at Old Trafford yesterday. Another defeat. That's now 5 home defeats already for Ruben Amorim. He made some curious decisions with the selections, Kobbie Mainoo playing through the middle, leaving the strikers on the bench. I mean, I know you've touched on a lot of this so far already, but every week when you think, okay, well, that's it, bottomed out, it seems to get worse. What's he trying to do there?
I mean, the only thing I can think he's doing is one of two things. Experiment to the point whereby he's just trying to find a solution that works, that he likes in the system that he wants to play. Or he doesn't like the strikers that he's got. I mean, I have to say, when I saw Kobbie Mainoo up front yesterday, I thought Fernandes was going to play in that position, or something. Garnacho might play up front and Fernandes to the right. When I saw Kobbie Mainoo as a centre forward or dropping in, I thought it's okay that you'll get control of the game. A little bit of what I've talked about here. You can get decent football, and it can con you. It can kid you, this decent football, where you're watching nice passes outside the box up to the final third. It's about putting the ball in the back of the net. It's about getting bodies in the box. It's about getting bodies across defenders and making sure that you're really creating chances. And that's not going to happen that much. Everything has to be perfect with Kobbie Mainoo up front and Garnacho and Ahmad. You've got three quite lightweight players, really talented, good players, but everything has to be absolutely perfect. And I'm just thinking about it from a Crystal Palace point of view. If I'm a defender, I'm thinking, I fancy this, I can out-muscle these. They're sharp, but they're not rapid quick. There's no real goal scorers there amongst them. I know they can chip in. And I'm thinking, we've got a chance here. So I'm seeing that team sheet, I'm thinking, we've got a chance. Now, I'm not saying that if they saw Højlund up front, all of a sudden they'd be starting to panic, but they'd be thinking, well, at least they've got a physical presence, they've got a battle. Xerxes, a big lad, and I'm not saying they're brilliant, these players. I just felt that when I saw that team yesterday, I thought if I was Crystal Palace, I'd be fancying it. And I was speaking to Lee Dixon in the truck watching it, and I'd be like, I'd be surprised if Crystal Palace don't score a couple of goals. And I can't see how United are going to score. Where's it going to come from? I think changes are going to have to be made. So yeah, there are some decisions and there are some selection choices that you look at and think, the Casemiro and Eriksen one the other week when we all Xerxes after 30 minutes and he had to change that midfield. I think he brought Mainoo on. There's sometimes when you see a team, it doesn't look right. If it doesn't look right, it quite often isn't right, and it doesn't surprise you. And I thought it would get better when Ruben Amorim came in. I thought that the enthusiasm of him and then the new system, I thought they'd buy into it, the players, and we'd see a bounce. We're seeing the absolute opposite. It's got a lot worse, and that's surprising.
Where does this end? I mean, is it going to be defeat after defeat and a sort of effectively the house gets burned down till the end of the season and then build again? I mean, what?
Well, they've not gone in. I mean, they've bought the left back, which I think that in the system that Amorim wants to play, wing backs are absolutely critical. You have to have energy and quality in those wide areas. Wing back is a different position completely to wing and to full back. You have to be good at both. So they've brought the boy Dorgu in, I think, who'll play obviously on that left side. Need that balance. They've obviously got Dalu or Mazraoui playing there, which is not ideal because they're always having to cut back on the right foot. But you're absolutely right. There's going to be a lot more pain, I think, towards the end of the season. And it is going to be damaging because they're obviously going to stick with Ruben Amorim. But the more you lose, the more difficult it is for the manager to convince the players of the idea. The idea that he talked about in the very early days, I will not change my idea. You need the players to buy into that. And if they keep losing with it, and then they keep getting criticised with it, and the spotlight comes on them more, and the fans are leaving unhappy. 75,000 leave, or 72,000 leave yesterday, 3,000 left, absolutely delirious, I'm sure. But 72,000 fans are walking out the stadium having not scored a goal. You've lost 2-0 to Palace, and it's that, that feeling of, and that will create you can't keep losing. You just can't. I mean, it will depress the thoughts of the players to a point whereby they'll start to lose faith in the idea, and it'll damage you.
What gives?
Well, it'll damage you for the start of next. I don't know. He has to do something. He has to.
He's not going to change.
He said
he won't
that,
change his approach.
We can't change his approach now because he's died in the ditch on it, and rightly so. He said, I think he's lost more games at Manchester United since he's come than he lost in the last 75 at Sporting Lisbon. I think.
Yeah.
I read that stat earlier, which is just absolutely alarming. So he will not be enjoying this. But I think he's got to simplify it a little bit. Whilst he might not like Højlund, he might not think Xerxes great, and might not like other players. He's got to pick the players that he has, stick with them. They're the players that he's been served. He knew that Manchester United were not going to be prolific in the transfer window in January. Everyone knew that when he came in. It was quite clear. I think I asked him in that first interview, I said, you're going to have to basically have these players for the rest of the season. Now, he's obviously lost Rashford. He's now got obviously a left wing back in, so he might think he's slightly better off. But it looked yesterday like Lisandro Martinez might have picked up a bad one when he sort of got stretchered off, and that's obviously an important player for them. He's not been playing brilliantly, but he's a personality in that left channel. So you're absolutely right. It can't keep going on as it is. They have to somehow start to play better, but where's it coming from? Because I have to say at this moment in time, it's a sorry situation, a very sorry situation when you watch United play.
Okay, well, I think that's probably
we'll finish on that, shall we?
We'll finish on that cheery note, shall we?
Big week ahead. I'm up to Newcastle on Wednesday evening, Newcastle Arsenal, so it should be a big atmosphere at St James's Park, and then obviously Tottenham Liverpool's a big game on Thursday as well.
That's huge for Arsenal, isn't it? Whether they can turn that round. I mean, everyone's talking about the Manchester City game, defining that this new character, this new strength they've got. But if they can come back there, that's going to stand them in great stead, isn't it?
It is, and I actually look at all the 4 managers who are in charge of these teams, and I feel like it's important for all of them, this trophy. You know, Tottenham for obvious reasons, Newcastle for obvious reasons, but then Arteta hasn't won a trophy for a number of years, and it's Arne Slot's first season. And if he can go and win that Carabao Cup and then obviously go and win the title, it'd be an amazing first season. But you're right, for Arsenal, you say Arsenal it's important for it absolutely is, because Arsenal need to win trophies. There's no doubt Mikel Arteta's built a fantastic team, but they have to try and pick up cups if they're not going to win the league. You can't always win the league, and they're in the contention for it this season. They're up against it with Liverpool, but they're in contention. They're there. They're playing well. They're on a good run, and so but I think it'll be difficult. I think Eddie Howe will feel like it's his moment. The Newcastle players, the Newcastle fans, they'll feel like it's their moment to get to a final again, and can they go one step further? And I think for Tottenham, Ange Postecoglou's almost, I won't say promised a trophy this season, but he's certainly said, I win trophies in my second season, which he's saying we're going to do it. And it's a huge game for all clubs this week. It's a really important set of Carabao Cup semi-finals. I'm looking forward to those.
And that's much more of a high to finish on.
It
well
is.
Done. Nicely turned around.
It absolutely is. Well done.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Gary.
Phil. Thank you.